Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I'm Chris.
I'm Swizz.
And thank you for joining us. It is Mad Monday. Like Geelong, I'm walking around. Got my clipped wings on at the moment, walking around with a nice little sling on for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Boys, it is good to be back. I'm not going to lie. I had to reconnect all my gear, put up the green screen, dust off the cobwebs. Speaking of cobwebs, I'll tell you what, my team cannot be found anywhere. Thank you for joining us. It's Mad Monday. Chris, how did you finish off the season?
Look, the actual last 3 games, I kind of like hovered rank. I dropped like an insane amount before that. So, I came back a little bit, but yeah, I actually ended up just over 3,000. So, I don't know, for those people who want to see, I did a really great pod last week. I called the anatomy of a Supercoach season, and I went through like all of the bad decisions that I made, and there was a lot. I think that was actually one of the better podcasts I've done this year, just as a solo one, because it really went through and identified for myself. And this will be good to go back next year and watch and say, okay, so this is what you don't do, Chris. This is far too risky approach.
It's like a journal. Did you bare yourself? Did you? Your anatomy to the world?
Yes, well, of course. I think that the biggest thing that I garnered from that overall was how much risk I actually took. And I did come to the realization during the pod that I really risked it. But obviously with the risk that I took, it was to try and win. It was I could just play it safe and get a top 1,000 rank, like Swizz. But I decided not to do that. So...
what was your preseason mantra? Wasn't it to like make smart decisions, don't risk it for the biscuit?
I did have one, didn't I? No, I had.
Yeah, it was like don't
I don't know.
Don't overthink it or something rather. Yeah, because you usually you went for the crazy, like, oh, I'm just going to bring in the pod and go with it in.
Yeah. So stop. So I didn't do that. Very often. I think I did that once, maybe twice. I didn't bring in pod for pod's sake, and I didn't just choose someone because it was an ego thing. I did risky moves that completely blew up my team. That's what I did. So, definitely go and watch that. But I thought it was a really, really
top 2 blow-ups.
And just what I will go through that. Before I do, I've noticed that it is Mad Monday after all, and you are doing your best Jeremy Cameron impression with that sling. So well done.
Yeah, thank you. I've got to say, sorry, Swizz, we'll get into your hype train soon, but considering that my team's not worth talking about, I'm just going to talk about myself for a quick moment. I scraped through like a rank of 5,000. Not great. It's quite funny that people were, I think when I was still top 1,000, I knew I blew my season up. I think it was around 6 to 9 or whatever it was, or 5 to 8. And people were like, oh, look at this guy, top 1,000, having a whinge saying you're not going to do well. I said, no, like the moves I made then, I knew I wasn't going to do well. Like I burnt trades, I made the wrong moves, I ran out of cash, and I had to settle for like a Sard type who was so up and down like Carlton, except he just wasn't getting the job done, unlike Carlton. But yeah, so I had a shoulder reconstruction, which is why I hadn't been recording as much, because I had to pretty much hand over a whole bunch of stuff for work, mark a whole bunch of senior stuff, get it all done and out there before I had surgery. And so I got 1 bullet hole in the front, 2 in the back. Apparently it was quite extensive. Everyone kept saying the surgeon comes in and goes, oh, it's very... Oh, I know, right? The surgeon's like, oh, this is very extensive. And he's saying he pulled out a pinball. It was a 6x8mm fragment in the joint, pulled that out, and 5 anchors in the back of my shoulder joint holding everything together. The stitching through the calamari, as he calls it. And yeah, it's been pretty full on. So it was extensive. Even the physio comes in and looks at it and goes, whoa, yeah, they're like an extensive surgery. And I was like, really? I feel pretty good. And smashed out the rehab, scared the crap out of my physio 2 weeks later. I have an ice machine at home, so I was like icing it, doing full rehab. And I was like, hey, look at what I can do. I could like full external rotation to here. I can get up here. And he was just like absolutely freaked out. Stop doing anything. You're like 4 weeks in. You can actually overstretch. And I was like, oh, I did not want a loose joint in the shoulder. So I had to really back off. But that's me. That's my life at this moment. Can't drive still.
One in the front and 2 in the back, is it, mate? Isn't that your normal?
Yeah, one in the front. Yeah. It's the
the standard Friday night.
the opposite. If that's what you're going with. But I've been getting dropped off and picked up like a school kid. I swear to God, like I'm 17 again, getting lifts and picked up and having to walk places. And it's
is she playing like Barbie girl as she rocks up and really loud to embarrass you? Because
no, that's a good idea though. That's a really good idea.
You're gonna go for the super embarrassing dropping kids off at school.
You should pick him up one day, Chris.
I have this really great thing. I make sure I hug the girls and William every single time. Just real huge,
you're
big
that
hugs.
dad.
Oh, hi, welcome home in front of all your friends. So you got to do it,
What an
man. It's
asshole.
part of
Especially when you have
It's dad life.
cleavage like you do, Chris. You gotta shake it.
Exactly right.
Swizz, you held the team up strong, not just in your hard nut bend global. Come on, mate. I'm not here. You know what? That's it, guys. I'm done.
Love it. Oh yeah, I forgot there's a chat.
Swizz,
going.
you held the
Hey,
team together,
guys.
mate. You were putting out weekly podcasts and recording, mate. I do appreciate you. And you finished strong, man.
I'm actually disappointed because I wanted another. I'm greedy. I wanted another top 500 finish, and if I'd captain Bont the week before instead of English, would have got that. Would have got into all my grand finals, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. I ended up winning 2 grand finals. It's just shocking in the end. But I'm still, 520 or whatever. So I can't be too upset. There was a couple of decisions, especially my captain. My captain decisions were friggin' horrendous this year. Which seems to be an ongoing theme. I'll get that right one year. The year I get it right, I'm winning. It's as simple as that. And then a couple of the pods that I went for. In hindsight, I should have held Tom Green. I was going to do the exact same thing you're doing, Chris, and absolutely rip through my team. Just I can't right now because I've got the weird background because I'm currently between 2 houses. So I've got half my podcast studio in my new house and half of it here, and making way. So that's why I'm sitting in the jungle tonight.
Mate, you're like Essendon. You got your bits in everywhere except for where you need it.
Exactly right. Exactly
right.
But it's been good, and I thank everybody on socials today. There's been a lot of people that have helped contribute. Not obviously, you guys are amazing, and we love working together. But there's a lot of other people in the Supercoach community that have come together and helping each other out and making it bigger and better. So I thank all of those people. 70,000 views just on my individual pods, and I'm pretty sure Chris would have had more of that. So or close to. Amazing effort from our supporters out there. So
I know, and I
Harry
was reflecting
I
as
averaged 122 on captains this year. Harry, I should have taken your captains. I'm going to go through my. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know what my captains.
I think at one point I was averaging like 145 for the first 8 weeks. I was hitting every captain, and then I hit some captains late.
You were. Yeah.
And the reason I hit some captains late was because I didn't have English. So when a lot of those weeks where people were captaining English and he went like 105 or 110 or whatever, I was having Bont when he went 167 and 146. So those I did get some really good late captains, which I think is probably what held me in good stead.
I got on actually Butters this week. I actually got one right.
Oh, don't even get me started on Butters.
Finish it strong.
Literally, I probably would have even jumped up like another 1,000 ranks. I'm not even kidding you. But here I was like, oh, Butters injury prone. He can get knocked out. He can't play a full game. I was like, I'll go McRae. They have a soft draw and he doesn't miss games. And then next minute they lose their soft draw. He gets like knocked out or injured and plays horrible. And then I'm just watching Butters just like rack it up. Didn't miss a game from that point on. Crazy.
I'm like North Melbourne. I finished the year with a win to go into the preseason.
Don't even get me started. I hung so much crap on North. Everyone's like, oh, they should get a priority pick. And I was like, mate, they got pick number 1 now. Like, what more do you want? Like, also, I'll get a handout through the front door, but also like give one through the back door as I get an NGA player as well for free. And next minute they win. So look, I'm like, now I've changed my tune. North do deserve a priority pick based on the fact that they won and didn't tank. The format for today, though, guys.
Oh, sorry, Ben. As much as I was going to say, I got ripped on Twitter about that today, saying they deserve all the picks under the sun. But yeah,
they do not. You cannot think you're a top 8 team. Trade half the moon, bring in Polek on like some ridiculous salary, and then literally have a cry as well to try and get more priority picks. So look, anyway, we have digressed on that. Format for today, though, SC Insider 100, find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. We are going to go through our top 10. Chris has gone through. He sorted through all the paperwork, listened to all the tracks, come up with our top 10s outside of Rucks, which was around a top 5. But we're going to go through and have a bit of a reflection in this period as well to look at, what picks did we kind of nail? Which picks were we well off? We threw a few speculation ones out there. Our midfield's horrible. Midfield was horrible this year. And Chris reminded me that I had some really horrible contentious defender in my top 10, Chris. So we're going to start off defenders, mids, rucks, and then forwards. Talk a little bit of smack along the way, and then finish off with probably the hardest part we found about Supercoach, as in going in or what we thought it would be with the new sub rule, and people were looking at for next year, and that is the format on Mad Monday. I am starting off with the Starwood, the ginger beer cask. And it is super light, tasteful, a bit of zest on the tongue. It's Mad Monday. I better not rock up hungover tomorrow.
Get up that last comment, mate.
Which one?
Corey's.
Corey's. How'd the bets go? Well,
Oh,
now this
wow,
is contentious.
this is
This is
contentious.
contentious. This is contentious because, right, we had a podcast, made a bet off the cuff. During a podcast, we're recording, we're trying to make good content, so we make a bet. After that, I had the realization, I'm like, oh, we probably should kind of negate sub scores if someone's a sub in the team. And Swizz says, no, fuck you. So that stood, and that was really the first and last bet that Swizz and I will have. So anyway, so I lost my Dylan Moore to Wingard bet, which was horrible, and we all knew it was horrible. As soon as it hit the tape, as soon as it hit recording, they were talking about paying it out early. That was definitely one to pay out early. Now the funny part is, Chris and I had one about Zeeble averaging over 90, and Chris was taking the payout early for about the first 12 weeks. And I nearly paid you out early, Chris. I nearly did. I nearly sports bet that. And then we made another one of Sicily to out average Will Day. So
we did.
This is where it stands. I lost $50 to Swizz. Chris lost $100 to me. However,
which, by the way, that would have been. We actually don't know. Was that?
No, Sicily smashed it. Remember, that was Will Day. It was like 135 to 95, and Will Day averaged strong to finish, but Sicily still averaged really strong. So you got
but the
absolutely
bet was from that week.
Yeah, from that week on. That's what we're talking about.
Was it only
he was
95?
so far behind. Yeah, because Sicily went on this massive heater on like 170s,
Smashed.
160s. He was so far behind.
Will Day actually averaged 107 since I traded him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
He still got smacked by Sicily. ever since he came in. He did bridge the gap though. Anyway, so this is where it stands. I owe Swizz $50. Chris owes me $100. However, I pretty much said basically the sub rule shouldn't count, which is what I told Chris. So I told Chris, you don't worry about that $50 for Zeeble because that's what a good person does, Swizz. And that Chris is going to pay Swizz.
Made no difference.
Chris is paying Swizz the $50 for the Sicily bet. And I'm the good guy that lets Chris keep $50 is where we're at.
Oh, thanks.
With new conditions for next year, Swizz, when you bet Chris, because I ain't taking your shit.
Ben, it would have made no difference. I had that bet like every time Wingard walked on the field, I was winning that bet.
I know. Take the subs out though. Maybe not.
No, it didn't make it. I could have given you a 30-point buffer. It made no difference.
Ben spotted. What's this?
Ben, you're back.
Am I a ginger? Spotted. Oh, I'm spotted. Right. Yeah. Where's Wally? Where's Wally? So Chris trying to weasel. No, it's not Chris trying to weasel out. He knew it was up for $100, but that's me doing the right thing and the kind thing.
Yeah, because next year we will contact you at all. Hey, like you.
No, that was me. But I feel like next year we will have some of those conditions in there because if he wasn't a sub, then it would be a bit better for the Zeeble train. And if Wingard wasn't sub, he'd still lose, but maybe not as badly. So look, anyway, that's where we're at. So that's the bet update. Chris, you want to hit us up with the defenders?
Yeah. So should we go through the actual top 10 first, and then we'll go through where we had them, or do you want to go through what we had? And
yeah, let's go with where they actually sit.
All right.
First.
So the top 10 defenders, number 1 was Dacos, which should we go through where we had them as we go through the picks, just so we don't double up?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay. So if there was a winner from this one, it would be Swizz.
Ooh.
Swizz had Dacos at 8th, which we both had him at 10, Ben. And Damo, who did it with us, had him at 9. So you actually were the closest to pin.
I'm still not on the green, but
and how funny that I had him at 10th, but didn't start him.
Yeah, well, but I think we were all in sort of we don't know what that first couple of rounds because he had Finn McGuinness in like round 2 or something, didn't he? And then I think he ended up going 120 in that round. Like it wasn't like, he I think first round he went 1.
Yeah, that worked really well. Hey, let's avoid Dacos and let's avoid Dawson because of the possible tag. And then in the end, he tags everyone in the back half of the season.
Yeah. Now, I suppose this is content that we may be doubling up on as well. But while we're talking about him, we may as well. Are we starting him next year?
If he's a defender, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he'll be defender. He should be defender.
He should be, but he played half. He played half the season as a pure mid though, so that could really skew him over 70-30.
Dual position.
I think he'll get deep. He only needs 35%. I think he gets it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but sometimes Supercoach do funny things though, because if he is a defender, he's going to be picked in 100% of sides.
But you got to
So
remember as
sometimes
well. You
they
got to
use
remember
that.
as well. No, because he's still going to be expensive. He'll still be 640k.
Yeah.
So people could still like avoid him. And he only played till round 18. So he's missed the last 4 or 5 rounds, which means that the time that he was actually playing midfield is diluted. I think he played pretty much at least the first 10 to 12 rounds as a majority defender and then started as a majority midfielder. So I'm pretty confident he'll probably get the 35%. If he doesn't, are we starting him as a mid?
No.
No. Ooh, Swizz. What about you, mate?
No.
Ooh, big one. Okay. So Dawson was number 2. He averaged 0.4 of points per game less than Dacos at 115.9. Next year, obviously, he's going to be a pure mid. So goodbye DPP for Dawson. And in terms of closest to pin, we all had him, obviously. Ben, you nailed it in second. I had him at first. So you are closest to pin, and so did Swizz. Swizz also had him at 2. So you guys, if you're keeping score, that's
another one.
Yeah.
2 to Swizz, one to Ben.
Another one that I didn't start.
I didn't
And
either.
you'll see it in the ruck too. I nailed the number 1 ruck, but didn't start him because I'm an idiot.
Sicily was third, so he ended up coming back with the Storm, and I nailed that selection. So he averaged 114.1, which is pretty much what his uninjured average was from the year before, right? That's he basically nailed that. So yeah, 1 each, and Swizz on 2. Stuart was number 4. Swizz, you nailed that at 4. I also nailed that at 4. Your 4 was Sicily there, Ben. So
what I have Stuart then?
You had Stuart, number 1.
Okay.
You were so far away.
Not really.
Miles away, mate.
So are you guys keeping score here?
Chris?
The closest to pin.
I
can't
just
do
know.
everything.
I think it's
that's right.
but you should not click at your fiance. That's horrible. Clicking.
No, it's clicking.
No good.
I'm
clicking no good here.
Right. Sorry, my our little baby's crying. We're trying to get him to sleep. All right, next one. So next
Luke
one was Ryan, actually, Luke Ryan. So I don't think anyone had Luke Ryan in their top 10 at all. So there's a miss for us.
Did I know it?
No, but he's that jack in the box though that we know has potential, but we thought with these shared points in Fremantle and probably Luke Ryan, we thought would lift up a bit, whereas that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
True that. Sinclair was the next one in. So he came back very strongly. And this is actually an interesting thing. So Sinclair playing in defense late in the year boosted his average up incredibly. When he was playing more majority midfield, he was only averaging about 100. He ended up averaging, let's have a look here, averaging 106.7. So those last few games.
Strong though. 122.7 last 3, 116 over the last 5. Here's a fun fact. I actually wanted to go from Zeeble to Sinclair because I waited way too long for Zeeble to drop price and be sub. I was $2,000 short of Sinclair, so I got Adam Sard.
Oh, no. That's killed you.
$2,000 short.
Oh, no. Don't tell me.
There was no one else there.
I don't even know that. How did I not know that?
I ended up using that money to like upgrade someone else in my final kind of trade, but I was literally $2,000 short and everyone else sucked. It was so bad.
So the thing with Sinclair, right? He's what, 29 next year, is he, or almost 30? Like he's on the older side of his 20s. And next year, does his role maintain? Does he stay behind the ball like he did in the last few games? Does he go back towards midfield? It'd be interesting to see what happens. But he's out of the guys in that top 6 range. He's the one that presents the most value. So he's actually looking at about 575 in terms of his overall price. So
29 next year, mate.
Sorry, 29 next year?
29 next year.
Yeah, so look, I think that he might be one that gets either slides under the radar or you can pick him up at a little bit of a discount in those top echelon of players. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know,
Wanganeen Miller could start to lift again to another level. He finished off really strong as well. Plenty of points to share.
And Ben, just so you know, you nailed Sinclair in the sixth position? Yes.
Yep. So what's that? 2 to me. Who got the? No one had Ryan.
No one had Ryan.
Who had Stuart? We went 1-1-1 the first 3.
Me and Swizz had Stuart.
So
Sicily
that's 2
was
apiece
me.
then. With the
Dawson was you and
between you two.
Swizz.
Okay.
And then Dacos was at 1, but you were closest to pin.
Okay. So defenders were pretty easy to read though, but we have done quite well between us.
Well, also I get a unique here because the 7th ranked defender was Dan Houston, and I had him at 8. You guys, no one else had him. So I'll take.
Is that even a closest to pin, or is that just a gimme?
Oh, come on! It's literally one. Thank you very much, my beautiful fiance. I'm on the turkey now, my friends. So look, Dan Houston had a fantastic year, and he still dropped the occasional 40. So he had some really big scores in there. Look,
helps when you're in yesterday's season from 55 after the siren.
Oh, that was glorious, wasn't it?
I was there. In line.
You was there for that.
I was there for that.
Oh,
such
my
a
gosh.
good kick.
What a kick.
Or some might say goal of the year and completely disregard Ashcroft.
No, well, Ashcroft was brilliant, but then there was Gouldens from the boundary as well. That was
that ain't gonna do it.
Unbelievable.
Ashcroft you'll see once in a generation, and that was it.
Mate, after the siren,
so he ran a little bit. Oh no, a winger ran a little bit, picked it up, and managed to run and kick a goal. I've never seen anyone have a running bounce and kick a goal before. How will I ever get through life?
Dude, you know who you sound like right now? Chris? You sound like Jeremy Howe after losing the mark of the year that year.
Don't know how that happened.
Do you know that this is actually a true story? When that happened, he left the Brownlow. He was so upset that he actually just bailed out of the Brownlow after that.
Good. He should have.
That's what I want. That's actually what I want. Players.
Well, he's not going to win the Brownlow, so he's like, I'm here for my award.
Yeah, that's it.
Literally to be fair, one thing. If you want to talk about being robbed, that was the most being robbed you've ever been. Danaher's mark was so about on the average side.
I think anyone that missed out on All-Australian will be a little bit robbed that Jackson gets in on recency bias. Oh, you had a good 5 rounds. Wonderful. In you get. In you get no Taranto, no anyone else. There's 1 small forward, 4 key forwards, and unlucky anyone else.
Yeah, I hope crazy.
I hope everyone. Well, no, actually, no. I don't want people flooding Kane Corns' show tomorrow. They should just ignore it completely. But it'll be the opposite.
Why do people think he has that much power? He's like one little minion with absolutely fuck all say on that panel.
One little minion.
Yet everyone thinks it's all him.
Yeah, it probably was.
No.
All right.
Sorry,
next one.
Doherty.
Next one at 8 was Doherty. Yep. Now the closest to pin looks like. Well, we all had him high. Okay, so Damo had him first. I had him second. You had him 4th, Ben. No, 3rd. And so did Swizz. So you guys are both closest to pin there. Doherty was. We were all wrong, but Swizz and Ben, you locked it up.
We thought he'd have the early boost in the start of the season, which is what we were relying on, and he was horrible. He had to lose. He had to miss games and then come back weeks before. And then he came back weeks before he was meant to, and then starts banging out hundreds. So I was like, how rude. Told me you'll miss a month, come back in 2 weeks.
For those playing at home, this is my netball championship glass for our premiership and our first mixed netball team. You're welcome. Now Newman was next, but obviously
with Swizz?
What? I will be playing. Oh no, not BBL. No.
Yeah,
I'll be playing.
Oh
BBL.
no, sorry.
The
NBL,
NBL.
I'll throw the team. AFLW starts this weekend, and BBL I'll be doing.
You could win a car for your oldest boy.
Yeah, I'm actually going to try it. I've been listening to the AFLW podcast. I was actually going to do something this week for it.
They need a different platform.
They do.
All right, so Newman's obviously no one had him.
Came out of nowhere. Newman average 116 over 3, 125.8 over 5. Absolutely crazy.
He also killed Sard's numbers. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, it hurt.
Once they started using Newman as a distributor, Sard's ability to get the pill, and they were just not going through Sard. I was kind of using Sard a little bit as a decoy because opposition teams were locking Sard down to stop his use. So all right, we'll just get the ball in the hands of Newman, and he played very good, especially the last 6 weeks. He's played fantastic recently. So
and another thing I could have afforded Newman because he was cheaper than Sard when I bought him.
Newman is my best advice for the year. I had some random stop me on Flinders Street Station, and it was like, "Oh, Swizz, hey, I need some advice. What defender should I jump on? I'm going to give you a left field one. Get on Nick Newman." And this guy apparently got on Nick Newman. and then dominated.
Nice.
It was I didn't say
That's
anything on my
fantastic.
show, but it's the best advice I've given all season. I was like, I want to find that passenger. Like, come up and say yes, thank you again. But I know he actually did put him in.
If that's you, message out Swizz
Yeah,
on
message
Twitter
out.
and hit us up SC Insider 100.
Yeah.
And here's one, Chris. You dumped out this guy, number 10.
Yeah,
No one
the
would have had him in their top 10 though.
the bane of absolutely no. The bane of my existence. Number 10, Harry Sheasel. So rookie of the year. He should easily win the Rising Star over that Ashcroft spud. But Sheasel, who played in the worst team and got 3 wins for the entire year and racked up more pill than anyone has ever done because the ball was down there every 5 seconds. He's the one that came in 10th. So good on him.
Average after you got rid of him, Chris?
Yeah, super average. He only averaged I think it was even higher, but I worked it out before last week where he got another 130 or something, didn't he, last week? Or something stupid? Or
114 last week and went bigger the week before, yeah.
So it would have been his average since I traded him was like 111. So it's just dumb, man. So he actually improved. He was averaging like 88 when I traded him. Yep. And so I was like, oh, look, if he's only going to average a high 80s, early 90s, and I'm not interested. And his role was looking at getting changed.
Who did you get?
Clarkson dropped out. Then who was the interim?
Hall
coach?
came in and then out. Oh, Ratton's gone.
Yeah, so Hall was in. He got dropped. And then Sheasel was basically permanently behind the ball. They stopped playing him through the midfield, stopped playing him up forward. And he was just dominating every single week. So
who did you get? Who did you get instead of him though in that trade?
Oh,
you should know because you reflected.
No, so I did. Yeah, no, I went to.
You went Houston. I went Ryan.
Because I went Gorn to Houston. It was part of this. Oh, yeah. There was 3 guys I brought in. So one of them was Houston. One of them was. I traded out Gorn for Houston. I think I may have gone. Sam Walsh and someone else. I'm not sure, but they were bad trades. I have to go through like exactly who it was. I'm not sure.
That would have been before Gorn's 200 too, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Gorn averaged 122 since I traded him too.
Okay, right. Gotcha. All right, so moving
on.
I'm
not even joking. I had I made like 4 really important hedge bets. One of them was Sheasel, one of them was Day, one of them was Gorn, and the other one was Jay-Z. So Jay-Z, I was a big win. I won that one. And the other 3, I absolutely got torched more than you could believe. The other guys that I had, so like Wines averaged I think over the first 5 weeks after the bye, he averaged 68. And then he had like 2 tons late, and then his last game of the season, 69. Thanks, man. Thanks for that. That was really helpful.
Because, mate, he was nearly on 50. They're like, hey, we're going to sub off our ruck and play Ollie Wines in the ruck against Nate. And I'm like, the commentators are like, what are they thinking here? Nate's just jumping. They actually put his knee into Wines' back at one stage. Just took him out. Yeah, I just heard about that news too because I had a couple messages coming through.
Unlucky Hobbs and unlucky anyone else in that team.
What just happened?
Parrish re-signed.
Oh, good on him.
Yeah,
that's really good. I respect that.
Honorable mention for Short, who obviously got DPP for defender, so no one would have had him in their top 10. 12 was Day and 13 was Lloyd. I think Damo was the only one that actually had Lloyd in his defense, and we kind of had a good chuckle at the first part of it. But Lloyd was actually traveling really well. He was averaging over 100 for a lot of the year inside the top 10 and then faded out with 91 average over the last 3 and 99.8 over the last 5. So he was a little bit up and down to finish. I think Lizard was the same, stealing a whole bunch of thunder for a few of those games.
So guys that we were all sort of on that also didn't really make it. So Sard obviously dropped off a cliff after being really hot early. And we were all on him. I had him at 5th. Ben, you had him at 8th. And you had him at 9th, Swizz. So we all, and 10th for Damo. So we were all pretty high on him. Bailey Dale, I also had him at 7th. You guys had him at 6th.
Yeah, he was someone we thought could definitely rise. He pulled it back together pretty well, though, but he started off so bad. Where I had people messaging me saying, should I get off Dale? I was like, well, I don't think he can get much lower than 430K, mate. So you might as well just hold Dale at that point.
And all of us were on Ridley, who had that obviously massive patch in the middle of the year where he just did nothing, but then came back with the thunder and then got injured. So he was around about 5th or 6th for all of us. And you guys also had stupid West Coast players in there. Ben, you were on Witho at 9th, and you were on McGovern at 10th there, Swizz. So
Where did McGovern actually end up?
No, he was horrible because he got subbed out.
You.
He got subbed out twice, I think, injured. Once knocked out on like 50, and another one was injured on bug rule. So if he wasn't injured or knocked out, he actually banged out some pretty good scores.
So, guys, who's got this scorecard at the end of the defenders? What are we on in terms of
I think I was pretty close. Swizz and myself might have been even.
Yeah,
you
I
might have
think
been
it's
one
something
behind.
typical.
Was someone not actually recording these down?
Somebody. in the
I got
chat
one
was me.
hand. You want me to right, left hand?
I just knew I was winning.
Come on, have some foresight to go with your foreskin.
I can still bite you.
Oh, yuck. Did you hear my comment?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
All right. Let's
Global
move on to
says,
the
Will
mids.
Day, pardon the pun, is he worth a shout out if he gets defensive DPP
He's definitely
next
on
year?
my view. On my list.
There's no way he's getting defensive DVP.
He's not.
He played virtually
That's the problem.
no defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played
will
pure
be
mid.
only, and he's based on his
breakout
average, he'll
for-
be like 550k.
Seeing
Yeah,
Rhino
it's-
breakout, if you can have one or two breakout defenders for next year, who would they be? I'll start you off. I'm going Young, number one. He didn't break out this year, came back fairly strong through the back end of the year. Everyone was like, Dacos or Young, Dacos or Young. I think Young could be the one to actually lift next year. And he started playing a bit of midfield time in the back end of the season, doing well.
So, Ben, I watched him in that Hawthorn Freo game live, and he looked so good in that midfield. Like he was just at home, and he really complimented Brayshaw and Sarong. So, yeah, it'd be
Good
interesting
left
to see.
boot, good
Be
distribution.
interesting to see if that's what they sort of go with in the preseason.
Yeah, my only concern though is that he did actually get a role here or there as far as a little bit more accountability. So he still scored pretty well in that role, but it is a concern because if he goes in there starting to be a little bit, negating, hoping to get a few loose chips out the back to distribute, then it could be a bit of a concern. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I will say this though, I don't think it's worth even trying to bank a defensive breakout next year. There are so many good premium options in defense next year. It is not worth it. And they're all guys that can average over 110. So who's going to be a breakout that's going to rival those guys? Like I've actually heard, a lot of people are on Sheasel to further breakout. He's going to be 550K. He'll be 550K. He has an unknown role. We will probably get that over the preseason, I would suggest. I think we'll probably find out a little bit more than what we know now. But Clarkson mid-year wanted to change him to a Rochelle Rankin type forward mid. So, does he want to do that over the preseason? Now he has the time to get that into him. If that's the case, then you cannot pick him at all. Like he's only going to be usable as a defender.
So
with it and based on the price, that could
Global stole my thunder there because the two that are on my list are definitely Witherden. Just because I think West Coast will actually even be worse, and he'll have a absolute lock on those kick-ins down there. So I see
you never know though. They might put Jinby or the new guy back into defense as well.
No, I think they could.
It is Witherden.
At the same time, I still think it's there. And the other one, if Richmond are to regress a bit, Jaden Short, depending on what the new coach does with him. So he's the watch because if he's around that midfield, I don't want to bar of him. But if the new coach goes, no, this guy's got to get back in the back line, we know how damaging he can be back there.
Yeah, I'm with you though, Chris, because you look at that list and there's not many changes. Dawson out, and that's pretty much it. Everyone else stays. So I think you are right.
The defenders are killing it. Yeah. I don't think it's an area of your field that you need to mess with, but I will want to touch on these couple of guys here. So Nathan Miller, hey, don't change that. Nathan Wangani Malira, obviously. So the only thing that's really held him back. So at the start of the year, his use was really bad. And towards the end of the year, he started to clean that up, which is why his averages started to sort of lean out, which is good. So I think that he can gain maybe 10 points. But again, he's not going to be, I think his price point is going to be something like high 400s anyway. So you're really going to be jumping on him to just return you an average return. It doesn't really make sense to me. And Himmelberg, the only saving grace is that he could be still forward DPP. So as a defender this year, he averaged just shy of 95 points per game with a couple of big games to finish, obviously. So that actually puts him in the top 6 forwards for next year. but not as a top 6 defender, nowhere near it. So he could be valuable as a forward, but not as a defender, in my opinion. There is obviously a chance that he breaks out further. We've seen him average 110 over an extended period. It'll depend on a few things, namely what happens with GWS over the preseason. Is he going to get majority kickouts? Do they move coming up the field permanently? What happens with Lockie Whitfield? So there's a variety of things that can happen to encourage more scoring from Himmelberg. But at this point, I think he's more valuable as a forward than he is a defender. So I probably wouldn't talk about it too much as a defender breakout, if that makes sense.
To global, in regards to Ridley, I think it could be a
chance.
case that, because Mackay potentially comes in, though it seems like Essendon's fallen down the pecking order there, 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah, Sydney.
And then, Zerk Thatcher goes out. I know Mackay's a much better version of Zerk Thatcher, but that doesn't really change your setup. It's just one for the other.
Interesting. Can we move on to the middies, boys? Because there's a lot of middies to get through.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So number 1 mid was Bont, obviously. Absolutely killed it. JD and Swizz both had Bont number 1. I had him at number 2, and you had him at number 4, Ben. So
I thought I had him number 1. I was full fit, fist pumping. Oh man.
And look, he's number 1 by a long shot. Now, here's the thing, guys. Based on so just so you guys know, if you follow Bryce Mitchell on Twitter, who you should, he does a lot of price projections. He's already put out a really basic price projection for, say, the top 6 or 7 players at every single club. And so Bont is listed currently at $714K. So he's going to be the most expensive player in the game next year at the moment. Awesome. It's a rough watch. I don't know because there's all this speculation about Bevo needing to change the way that he plays, and if that's true, then does that impact Bont negatively? I don't know. If he plays the same that he did this year, then you kind of have to get him at some point, but probably just hope that he drops a bad game in the first few rounds. But yeah, $714K to pay up for Bont is a lot. Where do you guys sit with that?
That is a lot.
I think Clary being about 50K cheaper.
About 65K cheaper. Yeah.
That's so. If I'm going one,
he's a lock. He's the biggest lock.
That's right. I'm going a fit Clary because we're willing to pay $700 for him this year. So you always want to start off with a captain, a vice captain option. And I think, if I've got there's one already done. So do I actually need to start Bont? Because we saw this year, we've all gone out. We were debating between Clary and Laird to start, and the better value was the move. It was good to have one of those options, but I don't think we need to go the 2 top ends. There'll be guys in that 600K range who can still be good VC captain options.
Yeah, but I mean, what I would say with that is, and I actually did analyze this, unfortunately, on my pod, is that starting with Clary over Laird was easily the biggest hit. And the reason why is because eventually I traded in Oliver, but 2 weeks later he got injured, right? Mm-hmm. So if I had him, at least I would have had him during that time. Everyone was having him, and he was pumping out good scores. I get on him. He still gave me 2 good weeks, but then obviously got injured, and then it was out and effed us all over essentially. But so I think. Do
you think that's bad, Chris? Remember how I sold the farm to get Oliver for his soft run. I traded out Goulden and extras to get him. And then I had to bring Goulden back in after an injury because he was such a good price. I was like, well, I have to get him now.
All right. Well, so Oliver was second. So Clary was second. Ben, you had him at second, so you win that round. Swizz, you had him at third. JD had him at third. I had him at 5th. Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. So I was right off.
Yeah, you were worried about the different roles, remember? You're like, he'll play defender, he'll play this, he'll play that.
Yeah, you were huge on that.
Here's what happened though with Melbourne early. They thought that the reason they weren't winning was because of because of the midfield wasn't working properly. So Clary actually never got the opportunity to play half back like they were trying to promote all preseason, and after every press conference. Goodwin kept coming out and saying, we've got to try Clayton in different roles. We can't burn him out and play him in midfield all year, blah, blah, blah. Goes and gets injured. But then they realized that actually wasn't the problem. It was the 2 ruck system that they were trying to work with. So then they dropped Grundy, and then they finally work it all out. But I think they got that one wrong as a coaching group and as a team. I think that they realized that they stuffed that up. So maybe next year it goes down, but at that value, it's pretty hard to pass up. He was still the second highest averaging mid, which is crazy. So Track was third somehow. Does he get forward status next year? It's got to be close.
No, I feel like
with Clary out.
The thing that hurt him was Clary out, because he was always on the cusp of getting it. And then Clary goes out, and all of a sudden Track a few weeks there was just pure midfield. So
I don't actually think any one of us had Petraka in the top 10. Looking. Not one person had Petraka.
Well, Petraka wasn't doing that. He was doing well, but he wasn't doing that well
because of his
he was on the fringe.
That's always been the issue.
And then
he can go out and play a couple of games and a couple of crap games.
And then Clary was out, and he just went absolutely hammer and tong the rest of the year.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, again, Laird will be say 620K next year from a guy that's averaged 120 plus before. Is that someone that we're looking to start next year? Is he just too old now? Does Crouch take up a lot of that ball if he looks like he's going to get some serious minutes?
Crouch surely has to move somewhere else.
Well, he's got some suitors now. Apparently, like the last month of football has put him on the radar of plenty of clubs.
Yeah, they're like, he can't play with
his contract.
Oh, really? Wow, that's such a bad buy from them.
Mm.
I am a little concerned, like say Dawson and some of these other younger guys coming through, like Siligio and a few others, that maybe they'll have a bit more dynamic. And Laird might be the one that they end up having to push back off the defensive line, because they're not going to move Dawson back there, I don't think, because he's part of their future and what they are trying to develop being a top 8 side. Laird will probably still crash and bash it out. He's low Tom and Grand anyway, but I feel like he could be the one that it might not be next year. He might still carry on for 115 to 125 average next year, but it won't be much after that. And I had the same considerations, I think, with Jared Lyons. He's probably got another year or two, I think, in that top echelons, and I don't know if it's next year or the year after that he'll fall off.
Well, I think that's the M2/M3 spot. The other 600K plus midfielder that you're looking at starting is the most interesting spot for next year if you're looking at all the midfielders, because you've got quite a few guys and a couple that could be breakout contenders that are all around that 620 to 600 mark. And I think who you choose there is going to be pretty critical in those first few weeks. So it'll be interesting. But obviously we had Laird, JD and Swizz. You had him at second, and me and you, Ben, had him at first. So he dropped down to fourth with a 116 average. Merritt was next. So Merritt came in at number 5. Swizz, you had him at 7th.
Well done, Swizz.
I had him. I didn't have him. Ben, you had him at 9th, and JD had him at 8th. So you, Swizz, you were bit more on the money than everybody else.
I think it was because A, how he finishes, but B, getting the captaincy. I was pretty bullish on Zaki. So
the next one was.
He's one of those ones that's in that group of, and I think Global saying about the changing of the guard is one that'll be high on the consideration list for next year.
Changing of the guard or recycling of the guard? Because what are they guarding? Not the premiership window or finals wins. That doesn't need a guard.
The thing is, I'm just Googling now. So Merritt's 27. So he probably still at least has another year in his prime. The next one is one that we all missed. And
Libba.
So it's Libba. We all miss Libba. I'm just trying to work out. So he's actually 31. It is very, very rare for a guy over 30 to have his personal best season in Supercoach. So I don't know.
That's exactly what we'd said, Chris. That's exactly what we'd said. We're big on saying.
Can I apologize to Abdul? While we're here, because he put it out there in the preseason, and I laughed my ass off. I'm not even kidding you. Because it was like, hey, it was like who am I? I could be like a top 10 mid. Who am I? And I was just like, Libba. I was like, mate, are you literally like high off your kite? And then so I apologize. Good spot.
And the whole
he didn't pick him
Bevo
for ages.
Yeah,
but we never trust Bevo, and he actually played 2 of his best midfielders in the midfield. He just booted out everyone else. It's like,
McRae.
McRae, Smith. I don't care about your careers. You get out of here. We're playing Bont and Liver in the midfield every week.
So the one thing is right. So people were like having a go at Bevo for the way he plays, and it never changes. But that's actually not true. He definitely changed the way that his midfield structure worked this season. So instead of playing everyone at say 55, 60% midfield time and rotating them all forward or around the ground, he played Bont and Libba as two primary mids, and then rotated that third spot. Now that is something he's never done before. So to say that he wasn't trying to change things, and don't get me wrong. And Libba had a personal best season, along with Bont. Those two guys that he put in there were the right call, and they still smashed in the clearances. It's everywhere else that doesn't really fit. So I applaud him for doing that because
who else had a good season though?
That.
Who else had a really good season, better than ever before, outside of maybe Caleb Daniel?
English?
Yeah. So outside of those four though, like Ed Richards injured, but did have a strong peak at some point.
Ugle-Hagan had his best season by a long stretch. Norton played well, but just couldn't convert his goals. Liam Jones was one of the best defenders of the year, except unfortunately he got injured for a large chunk of it.
He got the best
outside of say the top 8.
Well, yeah. But he got good football out of your lesser likes, which has always been like my biggest whack at say Carlton or whatever, because you've got to get those players from 16 to 22 to start playing footy. I thought he got some good footy out of Oscar Baker, who was on the recycling heap. Anthony Scott, even when they brought in Caleb Poulter, who's got the worst hair in footy, but actually got some really good footy out of him, from him on the wing. So I think that's usually the earmark of the coach. Like your best player should.
Poulter can't even kick it the right way.
But to actually get some good football out of those 16 to 22 players in your on a match day, and they definitely did that. But as you said, what really lets them down is their a couple of their defenders, and especially say your Norton, who they just don't convert goals.
Look, there's some guys in the team that really underperformed as well. So if we take a look at say Bailey Smith, who had obviously a shocking year, was played out of position, so we'll give him a pass. Rory Lobb, I don't know how much they paid him. Nothing.
Why they did that?
They still haven't really worked out their intercepting defenders well. Alex Keith is not really it, unfortunately. I think Bailey Dale took a step backwards. I don't think he was as good as he has been the previous years. I actually don't think that Caleb Daniel was that good. Like he had a good patch of games, but obviously he was thrown around all over the place. Ultimately, I think his best role is still behind the football. But there were games where his use was not Caleb Daniel-esque. It was turnover city. So, I didn't really like that. Baker was all right, but on the wings, I just don't think they had much threats moving the ball forward. Ed Richards was sort of moved behind the ball when he was on the wing. His use was poor. And then I'd say Cody Waitman didn't have as good a year as I think he's capable of. But overall. Anyway, we move on.
Well, to be fair, I think we did see a little too much of Cody Waitman at some point.
Yes, we did. All right, so moving on.
I knew it was cold. I didn't know it was bring your own beanie kind of cold.
So surprisingly, the next one, number 7, was LDU.
Only played 14 rounds though. And Chris, you got him in at a nice price point, didn't you? Nice and early. Yeah, I sold him for $50K cheaper as well. So I got him in on the back of his before his price rise in round 4, and he had a 145 and a 150, and then a laid out, and then he came back the next week and obviously was nursing an injury. But I bring him in because I was like, all right, I want to get him as a pod. And look, that ultimately blew up in my face. But after I traded him out and he came back from his injury, he averaged 122 for the rest of the season. So what we can say about LDU, and I said this today in a chat, LDU 100% has the pedigree to be able to be in the top 3-4 Supercoach players next season. But he also is the most injury-prone midfielder probably in the league right now. He had laid outs.
2 or 3 laid outs. He only played 15 games, so he missed 8 games this season.
14?
Was it 14?
14. Yeah,
so 9. So missed 9 games and had 3 laid outs. Really unreliable. He's going to be 620K. So he's in that echelon of guys that's going to be super expensive. And then you're like, well, it's a huge high risk. Now, one thing I will say about him, if you're starting him next year, is that what I didn't do this year is I didn't start Tim English because he was injury prone. and he's not going to make it, and blah, 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 blah. And I think that could be an English style pick where if he has the year, he's going to completely burn you if you don't have him. But are you willing to take that risk on someone that expensive, knowing this year what he did to everyone? So it's
he reminds me of Noah Anderson from the Gold Coast, except I guess a little bit more of a mature body and has less competition in his spot. Because I think if Noah Anderson didn't have like Raul and Tuke in there, I reckon Noah Anderson would just be racking up hill like Rack City.
The difference that I noticed between what LDU is doing in the last few weeks versus what he was doing when he was in my team is his hardness at the ball and his willingness on the inside. So when he was injured, he just turned to a little bit of butter and played a little bit more outside. Now, was that the role? Is that what he was told to do because his body was a little bit broken? And he came back in and he was hard at the contest and he was winning contested ball. And he's as good on the outside as he is on the inside, which is one thing that is great about LDU. But yeah, I don't know if I can do it. I've been burnt by him this year, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can do it. So
yeah,
but yeah, we all missed him.
I've been big on starting LDU for next year. Depends on what the structure I go in, but I prefer to start as long as he's got no injuries pre-season and gets to the pre-season fine. I would prefer to start LDU than have to bring him in and then trade him out again. It's one of those. It's that, as you said, the whole Tim English from last year. Because he's going to get injured at some point, but I would rather have him in there. Hopefully North Melbourne get a soft draw to start, which is more than likely. They're probably going to play West Coast, Hawthorn, Gold Coast the first sort of 7 weeks, usually what happens. And you can see LDU going that sort of 120 average during that time. And then whenever he does pick up that injury, then it's easier to trade him out than the other way around. I think Janko's got he's got a great question there. And that'll depend, as I said, it'll depend on structure because he just brought up a guy that I started him this year, traded him out, thinking, well, Hammy, how effective is he going to be those last 3 weeks? And every one of my opponents had him and just killed me in the end. He will be.
Yeah. But is the game going past the big boys though? Like Clary, not as good?
Not him.
You reckon?
See, this kid's a beast.
He wasn't that impressive though. He was chipping away, doing some pretty good things, and then a little bit of recency bias and bullied some people at the end.
Dude, he still was the 9th highest averaging mid this year. So
but the mids were also really crap for most of the year.
But he's the second version of Clayton Oliver, mate. He's this big body.
He's a chunky boy. Clayton's lean. Clayton gets the K's up. Clayton does his hammy properly, not like a little twinge.
So, I mean, these guys are going to be interesting, right? Because the guys that we were talking about before this, and then the guys that we've just mentioned in LDU and Green, they're the legitimate contenders to be the potential number 1 Supercoach mid in the next few years, right? They are the contested guys inside that if they get their disposal efficiency properly, they can average 120 plus. When are you going to jump on them? Because now, again, they're both going to be 600 plus. I think Tom Green is probably, I think he works out to be about 610, 615K. So he's around about that sort of Brayshaw mark that he was this year. There's a lot of guys around that same price. And the other guy in that same mark is Sarong. So he obviously had a good year this year. He was the 8th highest averaging guy. Again, none of us had him. So of those 3 guys,
he was a big breakout.
Yeah. I mean, of those 3 guys, can you see anyone starting those guys, or are they too expensive to take a risk? Or
and that's where it comes down to how many I actually have, and their fixture too, where they're starting. Because LDU, I can see having the softer fixture. Freo probably get looked after a little bit more because of their poor finish this year. And Sarong and Brayshaw just took the mickey, waxing with each other. So I feel like there's no reason for that Sarong's going to regress. And
I think that's a lot of money, though.
Yeah, but I'm more of the point of looking at those guys than going in Yills and Lairds and those sort of guys who are 29, 30, 31, where I would rather get on these guys who are sort of 22, 23, 24, the next big thing, because they're going to break out either this year or the next year or the year after. They're like, to the point, as Chris said, be the number 1 guy. I don't want to not be on that when they just burn you and you guys are, whoever is chasing them, because they're the 3 of the next big things in Supercoach. They're already top 10 at the moment.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
top 10 on a bad year again. So as in you're looking at, this year we had mids that should have done a lot better that are absolutely going to be well and truly underpriced. So defensive line, I'm having to pay up because that's where you pay for the best players. Rucks as well, we've got some really good options. I don't see who's going to be really, unless Grundy goes to another club and Gorn has his own thing, then maybe there's value there. But otherwise, you're probably still looking at paying up for an English. Then you go
Guys, I'll
into
tell you, I'll
your
tell you why
midfield,
you
there's
can't
value.
get these guys. All right, and it's pretty simple. So at this
Value?
same price point, right? So again, you only have maybe 2 or 3 of these guys, right? So LDU, Sarong, Green, all the same price as Dawson, Dunkley, Butters, Rosie, Goulden, Taranto, Canelio probably as well. All of those
Cornelius
guys will
560.
all be mid only next year, and they all average between 110 to 115. Now, am I getting on LDU or am I getting on Butters? Am I getting on Goulden or am I getting on Sarong? Rosie again. I think he's good. These guys have higher gears to go. So that price point, that's 600 to 630.
I'm not as convinced there, Chris, on that with some of them. Like Butters, yes, if he
Yeah,
continues.
but you've
But
added
the
in
other
more
ones,
options.
I'm
You're
like,
missing the
Dunkley,
big thing.
Tarantos. I think they're very good, but I don't know if they can go to the levels where I think Tom Green, LDU can go.
So those players that are a little bit halfway in, halfway out, you don't know if, Rosie, based off some injuries, or Butters might have to play forward for a small stint and then get DPP round 6 in. You've also got the, Tug Miller underpriced. He'll be like 520, 530. You've got Mills at 488. You've got Walsh also going to be super cheap. I don't know how you're going to be paying up for trying to get a Clary and some of these other guys for your VC and C, but also spend 610, 615K for a guy who may or may not break out. I don't think he's going to burn you the same way that you're thinking. Based off
That's
the
gonna be
value
the
that's in other lines, I think you're kind of better off waiting and seeing if one stands up, then sure, go there. But otherwise, there's
I'm
value in that line better than there's any value in the forward line, better than there's any value in the defensive line. It's the midfield where there will be underpriced people.
I'm going to say that now, Ben. This is going to be the great debate as when Supercoach opens. People are either going to go, okay, I'm putting in Bont and say a Walsh or Mules type, or they're going to go the 2 6-10 guys. And that's going to be the kind of debate that we're going to be going into the season. I can see that 100%.
I agree with Global on this one. Tuke was very effective tagging in some, but still got his own ball. I think Anderson's going to be the next fabulous player. I don't know if it's 2024 or 2025, but for me, I'm probably even thinking, I think Walsh, based off this year, if he has a good run in the preseason, I think Walsh could be someone that stands up.
I kind of
for me.
disagree with the Suns just because of the way Dimmer's coached Richmond.
Yeah, that's what I was
We've
about to
never
say.
had guys who have gone outside. Dusty had one of the greatest years of footy ever. Was it 2017? And he averaged 119. It's just not they. No, Django. It's just not the way he coaches teams. Actually, I saw the replay, but he. It's yeah. So I'd like to see what they're going to do with that midfield setup, and is it a case where they're trying to get more time into Flinders and Humphreys and stuff? So, like, I feel like the Suns, they could be capped compared to some of these other guys who are just, we know they're inside bulls.
Yeah, I just want to wait and see. I mean, maybe the preseason tells us a little bit more information with that, especially so Flanders. But they've got enough mids to make it happen at GC. But the Dimmer's never really had a premium mid in terms of scoring.
No.
The only guys ever had really that went really well was obviously Dusty in his that 1 year where he went 118 as a forward.
Yeah,
that's the highest.
We also forget that the Suns they had some really premium mids in there. They had probably some of the least changes to their CBA mids out of a lot of other teams. Yep. So they were kind of predictable to line up against because you kind of knew who was going to be in there. Some teams do like a little bit of variance, bringing in a Humphrey or a Flanders or someone dynamic or something different that oppositions can't really match up against. So it does depend on the coaching as far as if they want to be predictable or whether they want to kind of mix it up as well. So who was else on this top 10?
The last top 10 player was Lockie Neal, who I think we all had somewhere in there in the top 10. And just to cap it off in regards to what unique picks that we thought would go well that didn't. Ben, you had Parrish in your mid mix at 6. You had Mills at 7, McRae at 8. We all had McRae pretty high, I think. We both had him at 8. JD and Swizz had him at 5. And Jelly. So 2 people, Ben, you had Jelly. I had Jelly at 6. JD had Jelly at 10.
The Taranto factor.
Yeah, and then Steele. So Steele was one that we all pretty much had on some level, and I actually think he could be the value pick of next season. I'm calling it right now that I think Steele. I think he's around 520K next year. If he has a flawless preseason, I put that into the same perspective as what Cripps was in 2022 before he had a really great preseason and just absolutely killed it. I think he was 450K that season. And then came in an average, 111 off the back of that year, wasn't it? So I think that could be a great value pick moving into next season.
He could be, but if like Cal Toomey's been really big on this about Jack Steele potentially being somewhere else, which is just
wow,
would be huge.
Great.
So he's the only one that seems to be saying
so many mids to get rid of.
Well, that's right. But I think it's to do with about Saints maybe. What assets do they actually have to sell to get some talent?
One thing,
and they do have.
Didn't Ross Lyon say in one of his press conferences, he said at some point that they don't have an A-grade midfielder like that, and I think everyone just went, "You have Jack Steele."
Yeah, I don't think he rates him
said
as
that.
high
Yeah,
as,
that's what I mean. So the coach mustn't rate him as like an A-grade mid, which
and I don't think Cal would say that. Just to throw that out, the fact that he's thrown it out multiple times, he's got to have heard something or know something around that. So I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to happen, but maybe clubs have inquired, and until trade period could get really interesting there. So
Janko's got it made, mate. Steele is slower than Lions.
Yeah, and I
slow.
think they see it as they've got the guys coming through. Philippou, we've seen Mitch Owens playing in different positions this year. Brad Crouch played some fantastic football, so he can kind of be their extractor, and Steele might have the currency that it's hard to sit there and say you're going to move your captain on. But, if there's other teams are willing to offer up a high pick, which potentially could happen.
Steele will be a forward DPP next year, boys. There you go. Mark my words.
Well, I mean, look, that all could be true, but that doesn't mean that Steele's necessarily a bad pick.
No, no. I think he could be a bad pick.
I think a lot of people are. Yeah, a lot of people are burnt by him because they all had him this year, but I didn't, so I'm fine with it. I go into next year clean slate. So
I'm just going off as we were talking about Ross Lyon, and I don't think he sees him as that. Like you're hoping he's going to rebound to be the best midfielder for them. But if he was elsewhere, 100% I'd jump on there. And the other question was about Mills, and again, I guess it depends on how Horse lines up with that Swans, but he's too good of a player not to be, there must have been something wrong with him at different pipes this year, because that's not the Mills we've seen from the last 2 years.
Have you seen this rumor here? Corey saying, hearing a rumor that Whitfield to Collingwood, I hope it happens. Do you know where that deal's going to go down, Chris? Who's that coach?
Kingsley?
Who's the coach of Collingwood? Who's the coach of Collingwood?
McRae.
So where's this deal going down? Whitfield to Collingwood. It's going down at Lambert's house.
I was going to say it's not going down to McRae's house. It's going down
Brisbane Lions, a good affiliate there. They'll do the deal at Lambert's house. I
love rumours this time of the year and trade rumours.
Look, I will say one thing, and this is the first time I've said it live, but I have watched Steele Sidebottom for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I think he's done. So we need another winger, and he would be perfect in our system. We really lack, like what he gave us early in the season was phenomenal. I was like, wow, what happened to Steele Sidebottom? He's all of a sudden turned into the 2020 version Steele Sidebottom. And now I feel like the game's gone past him, or maybe his body's just not up to a full season or whatever it may be, but he's lacking a step. His foot use hasn't been fantastic. And
sounds like all of Collingwood.
Well, yeah, I'm just a speculation at this point. Like, so if that was the case, I think he is signed for next season, but I can now see him being sort of that guy that's on the fringe of the 22 moving forward.
Play McRae.
They don't need him anymore because
and he doesn't have the way that they play now. They need speed on the wings. Like he's an endurance athlete, but he's not necessarily a speedy winger. He covers a lot of ground, but he's never been really a top paced player. And I just feel personally that they could do with someone who like the reason why Markov, as bad as his use is in the team, is because he brings so much speed on the ball that it doesn't matter. That's why McRae likes him. And you can't really do that when we've got, say, Will Hoskin Elliott on one wing and Steele Sidebottom on the other. They're not giving you what you really need from those wings. So, yeah, I would love that. So.
I've got to go here for Janko.
Okay.
Now, can I tell you that someone from work, her husband bought tickets to Melbourne about 5 weeks ago. So cocky as hell. Bought flights. I'm going to the grand final weekend. Literally bought flights to Melbourne about 5 weeks ago. And then Collingwood just started losing everything.
I respect that.
I love Sidey, and I hope that happens for his sake, because I really like him. But
Melbourne's going to roll Collingwood. They'll beat Carlton.
If Collingwood don't get through the first week, they're out straight sets. Otherwise, they will. If they get through,
can I tell you they're saving? No. Can I tell you they're saving grace? Is that if Melbourne beat Collingwood, right, I have full faith that Collingwood will roll whoever's next, because that's the way that they play. They are too good of a team to let a bottom 4 team to roll them over. I actually worry, not because I think Brisbane are better than Collingwood. However, if you've ever seen a Victorian team play at the Gabba, it's not a home field advantage. Chris, you can attest to this. When Collingwood play Brisbane, it's more like 60-40 Collingwood. So even if they play at the Gabba, there's literally zero home field advantage. The only benefit that we have at the moment against Port Adelaide, Lions will probably have most of the advantage. Whereas if we play a Richmond, if we play a Brisbane, we are outnumbered. Chris, right? Like, it is literally like a Collingwood home game. It's stupid.
It doesn't matter if it's any big Melbourne team up here is very highly followed. Yeah.
Because most of them move up here, and that's the only supporter base.
Half the Brisbane fans are actually like former Collingwood and Richmond fans anway. So they just put their old jersey back on and rock up to the footy. It's great.
On that, Ben, I think Carlton are a big chance to get knocked out to the Swans, but if they find a way to win that, the lid might be off, and I think the Blues can
I think Swans' defense is too cooked to handle 2 good guys there. I think they'll just get beaten up.
So I think the Blues will get, and if the Blues get on a roll, if they know they can win one, I just feel like they're going to get on this roll here. I don't want it to happen. I do not want it to happen. I hope you're more right, but I think funny feeling
Carlton have had a really bad few weeks of giving up 6 to 8 goals in a row for nothing. And if they do that to a good team, like they did it to obviously GWS last week, absolutely went on a roll against them. The week before that, Gold Coast went on a roll against them. If you do that to a good team, you are cooked, man. That's not going to, you can't come back from that. So they need to turn it up pretty quickly. Finals are awesome, and we'll go.
Yeah, they've got the forward, but I'm really interested to see how Charlie Curnow goes finals. Yeah, because
All right. So moving on to the forwards, guys. We'll skip the ruck line because we didn't really.
Can we just reflect on the ruck line for a second? Outside of everyone else there, the fact that I was very bullish, saying that English is the #1 averaging ruck, and I banged on about it all preseason. And then because of his little hamstring, little flare up, I was like, oh, let's play it safe, and brought in Wits. And then I did not own English at all for a single round, for a single second all season, which is why I ranked so poorly.
Yeah, and my thing on English, I think I had him 4th, but I had him 1st on average, because I said he was going to average #1, but does he play 10 games, 15 games? He's not playing a full season. And of course, he's one of 2 rucks to play a full season.
And then Grimo went Marshall and English, didn't he, as his 2?
Yeah, I think so.
Whereas, I think we went
#1.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the ruck line, I spent a lot of trades, and I made wrong decisions, especially because the 2 guys that obviously ended up being the most popular ruck combination ended up being the highest averaging players. So, unlucky for me, but it is what it is. Forwards.
I agree with Global there. I agree with him. The rucks are going to be very interesting next year.
They are. Yes, absolutely. And depending on trades and a bunch of different things, I think the best combination to start could be Gawn and Grundy again. But Grundy will be sub 500K, and Gawn will only be like 570. So if the trade does happen, then it's going to be interesting to see who jumps on a 700K Tim English over a 575K Gawn. So
if Freo were to move Sean Darcy, how much does either Jackson or Darcy become tempting there?
Jackson's a lock, because I think he works out to be
he'll be a forward.
30K.
He'll still be a forward.
As a forward. And he'll be the #1 forward by an absolute mile.
Yep.
And he's ruck forward. So you've also, I'm considering starting him anyway. 530K ruck forward. He averaged 87 with Darcy and 118 with. So that's a huge difference, right? Without. So regardless, natural progression should see him average somewhere in the 90s anyway, even with Sean Darcy. Now, if he gets traded, he's the lockiest of locks in Supercoach next year. You could not get him out of anyone's team. Like, he will absolutely be the number one forward, and he potentially could be. No, I wouldn't say number one ruck. I don't think he's necessarily that great of a player. Maybe a bit early to be a number one ruck as well, but because he's got that forward status, absolutely lock him in. So Jackson is an absolute heavy watch, but at this point, because of the lack of forward options, I'm seriously considering starting him regardless. So, and just for 530K, like, you might not get cheaper than that.
Yeah, I don't know which forward's going to keep their DPP.
And that is the biggest problem with this year.
That's
so Jackson
be,
was a top 10 forward this year. He was technically 9th. So again, he's already a top 10 forward. And we could see some more progression. Dunkley was obviously number one. We all had Dunkley at number one. Butters was number 2, just behind him. I think we all had him around 5 or 6. Actually, Swizz, you didn't have Dunkley, but you also had...
No, I had Dunkley.
No, sorry, you didn't have Butters.
I had Butters, but I didn't have Butters in that list I sent you because I had actually had my dual position players locked in. So exactly Butters was my next, like, way down.
7 or whatever.
10,
yeah, we all had about 5 or 6. So with Butters, again, his body was our issue mainly, and role. And look, he could win the Brownlow this year, to be honest, with how well he's played.
3 votes last round.
How do we gauge him moving forward? Do we lock him in he'll be a 630K. He's another one in that mid-range. He'll be a mid-only, obviously. He won't be a forward next year. Is that someone we look to that can get even more out of? Or do we think that, say, 115 is the level? What are we thinking with Butters?
It's hard because Wines will still be in their mix, who they've had to play ruck because they've got the extra option. That extra option is Horne-Francis. Horne-Francis development, I think, hurts that group. It's a case of they've got too many good players running through there. You're still going to have Houston taking out points. They're potentially going to have a better ruck, which will help, but there's a ruck coming in where at the moment they've got some weeks they've had rucks taking 10 points, 15 points of the pie, and they could potentially have a Grundy taking 100 plus points. So there's another mouth to feed.
I'm worried about like Ollie Wines and that type of mid. So, the slower ones, like your Jared Lyons, your Ollie Wines, your Steels, the old slower contested kind of player. It's now this year I found to be a little bit harder and a little bit more exposed as far as really dominating. Because then you get especially when they come up against those dynamic types, when you have like Butters and Rosie that can still be super hard at the ball, but then as soon as it's like slightly on the outside, they just get burnt. And for me, I think Horne-Francis next year will be just as hard at a contested ball as maybe an Ollie Wines, except he's got so much power and youth and speed to just blast out of that pack. How do you not play him?
I was thinking today, what do you think Scott Pendlebury's 2-year contract that he signed is worth? And what about Taylor Adams? Do you reckon we could just package them up and delist them and get Bailey Smith? Like, legitimately, like, because like it's a legitimate thing, right? Don't get me wrong. I think Pendles has been absolutely fantastic for us for a long time.
Put him on a player coaching role. Put him in the back pocket.
Pendles is Tom Brady, mate. He's playing to his 45.
He's too slow to play in defense. He can only play midfield. But a lot of the times, the thing is, if the ball doesn't go forward from our team, he's a liability defensively because he just doesn't have the legs to be able to chase these young mids around, right? So someone like a Bailey Smith with speed to burn, who's a big-bodied mid that can play inside. I know his obviously use isn't that great. I would love to see that.
I'll answer that, Chris,
mid-rotation.
as simple as I can. Bailey Smith is only going to Geelong because of his connection with Cotton On. He's already spending time down there in Geelong, with his marketing and everything he does for them. And it's just the natural move for him because if it's this year or next year or the year after, because that'll allow him to spend more time doing what he does that. So I can't see him going anywhere else but Cotton On and Geelong.
Wow. crazy. I wouldn't be surprised because they get every good mid that that is available.
Well, it's Geelong's major sponsor, I think, or one of their major sponsors has got it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, the whole thing is packaged together. And I found out about that about a month ago that he's actually, on, because the players get a day off a week, sometimes two, depending on how their week's structured. And he's been spending his time down there on his day off.
All right. Now, the next one again, so more chats. Goulden is the third rated forward this season. I think he averaged 111, which is surprising again because he's a guy that, because of the role that he plays, that he played a lot of wing time, some half forward time. There were some games where he'd have 40s, 50s, 60s, and then other games where he's gone 160, 170. So where do we see his progression moving forward? Is he going to get more CBAs? Is that his permanent role? Do we just see this 110 as what we can expect out of him for the next few seasons? And as a mid only, is it somewhere we're looking to have in our teams, or is it someone that, we wait because of that they might drop a 50 and then you can pick him up later in the season? Like, where are we looking at with Goulden, guys?
He's a smoky for the Brownlow, at least for top 5, because his best games, he's just 3 votes each time. But as you said, and there'll be games where he doesn't feature. He's not one of those guys where, we've, he gets that 100, 110 every week. He's 3 votes or no votes. So, I can't wait to see how he polls on Brownlow night. I don't, as a pure midfielder, I don't know if I'd start him, but it naturally be on the watch list because I think there'll be a period there where we might consider getting him, especially if the rules change for Supercoach and we were looking at maybe like they bring in the wild card situation, which would be fantastic. So that's where I could see someone like him go, okay, how has he been going, tracking into the bye? Now I want to pick him up and put him into my midfield.
I don't mind that at all. I'm probably in the same boat. We all had him, by the way. So we're all 5th or 6th, so pretty close. Rosie is obviously the next one. So the forwards pretty much picked themselves. I mean, we kind of got lucky this year in that we had some really definite, no, these guys are all having midfield changes. They've all got previous history. They're all very obvious selections. And that turned out to be absolutely the case. The top 6, Dunkley, Butters, Goulden, Rosie, Taranto, Canelio, we all thought all of those guys would be top 6. I don't think there was anyone that didn't have those guys top 6. Everyone had them and around. Again, all guys that are going to be mid-only. The one that I'm not touching is Taranto. Like, we saw late season what Taranto is capable of. Unfortunately, he's hit or miss. He can go on runs or into purple patches where he can score really great. He can then go on the complete opposite where he scores 80s for 5 weeks in a row. Like, it's kind of because of the way that he uses the footy. That's kind of what I see there. As a mid-only guys,
the new coach worries me with that sort of stuff too.
Yeah,
I don't like touching it. That's the only one from Richmond appeals for me. I've already said is short potentially next year if there's a change where it sees him permanently go back to defence. But the Richmond players I wanted to be going near.
Now a little bit of cheating. Moving on to the 7th pick, McRae. So he obviously gained.
He wasn't
DPP.
In that mix. Yep.
So skipping on him, Sheasel was technically the next forward in that range. Then Jackson, and then I'll go to 10 and 11. I will touch on 11. So Kernow was 10, and obviously he actually averaged just shy of 100. I think it was 97ish or something like that. And then Shea Bolton. So he had a lot more midfield time this year. Swizz. Do you think that he retains forward position? And what do you think his role looks like moving forward?
I think he could potentially retain forward position. Again, it's the new coach situation. So I don't want to start, unless the new coach came out pre-season say Shea Bolton's starting pure midfield. That's the only way I'd probably do it. But at the same time, I'd want to see it first. I'm not confident. There's just one of those guys where I think, it reminds me of the forward line a couple of years ago where we went all bargain basements to start off with and mid prices, and we might have had 1 premium, where last year was a complete different, where we started 5 premiums or 4 premiums and a Cunnington or something like that. We're all in. So I think we returned to the year of, Canelio, Brody, all those guys in that 200, 250 kind of range. I can see that sort of being my forward line structure next year. Load up mids and defenders, and hopefully there's enough cheaper options in that forward line. So I think I'll just wait and see there. It also depends on what they do with the list. Like Dusty finished off like a house on fire. A few people, congratulations to a couple of people. Riley, who I know beat me in my career cop league, he was huge on Dusty and averaged something ridiculous in the run home, like 116 or something. So yeah, I'd want to see how the Richmond, what they do off season before I'd even want to commit there.
Yeah, look, I think I'm looking at this forward line for next year, and Dunkley mid, Butters mid, Goulden mid, Rosie mid, Taranto mid, Cornelio mid, McRae probably stays forward. Do you want him? He'll be about 550k.
If he changes clubs, maybe, or if the coach
there's
changes,
another club
maybe.
coming on. Yeah, I was going to say there's another club coming knocking there. Is there
Isn't
enough?
he 30? How old's
Yeah,
McRae?
that's the problem. And the hard thing is because usually these sort of players, because there's a lot of talk at the moment about, say, Isaac Smith. There's a team trying to twist his arm right and get him, across for a year because his form's still been reasonable. But you look at
Dimmer's definitely knocking on his door.
So you look at the top teams and you go, okay, well, Collingwood probably isn't, and that's the same with McRae. And I don't see the Pies going out to get McRae. Melbourne aren't going out to get him. Port aren't. They don't need another midfielder. The Lions don't. They did that last year. So really, what teams up around that mark are going to go, yeah, we want Jackson McRae in our midfield next year? There's not a real obvious one that stands out for me. The teams that probably need him maybe down the bottom, but
especially the other thing is, so Bailey Smith has made it very, very clear that he wants to play midfield. And so if he does not get traded, and the only reason that he's getting traded is if some other team, I don't think it's really even that much cash. Like, don't get me wrong, I think cash obviously matters, but he's going to make so much with sponsorships that man doesn't really matter too much. It's more he wants the role.
He goes down there, he's the face of Geelong. So
he wants the midfield role. So if someone's going to guarantee a midfield time, he'll play there. Now, if that's Dogs next year, and they're already obviously committed, Libber and Bont. So where does McRae then play? Permanent half forward?
And Bevo loves Treloar, absolutely loves Treloar. And I was listening to Treloar's manager today, and because still the Brisbane and Gold Coast have both, contacted his manager to see, because his wife's still, playing up for the Firebirds up there. But they, he said no, they're happy, they're making it work. We know they've got the young bub, but they so that's why the Queensland clubs have inquired about Treloar again, and so Treloar wants to stay, even though he's one of his good mates has gone to Brisbane and dunks, and his wife's up there and family up there and everything like that. Still wants to stay in Melbourne. Still wants to stay at the Bulldogs. And Bevo loves him, plays him in that midfield the moment he's fit. So if Treloar had left, it would be a completely different story. And that's probably the move that makes sense for Brisbane because of Treloar's age and injury history and everything like that. Is to say, okay, Treloar out. We want to keep Bailey Smith. We're playing Bailey Smith in the guts, but I don't actually see that happening. So, but I feel like one of these guys is going to get pushed out. It just depends what club.
Forwards are horrible. No thanks.
Well, the other one is, so the next one's Sheasel. So he's obviously going to be defender only next year. He won't be forward or mid. And then, so from there, so if you take it, so you've only got really one out of the top 7, which is McRae, and then it's Jackson, which could be a really good pick and could be an average pick. And then it's Curnow and Bolton. And actually the next one is Dusty, but again, there's no way I'd touch Dusty. So I think next year could be we definitely have to wait on role changes, obviously in the preseason. Trades could obviously impact everything. But right now there's really no clear and obvious forward selections. Even someone like a Flanders, for example, we don't know about the new coach. We don't know if he's going to be retaining the role. They've already got a plethora of mids. What do they want to do there? I think it's going to be the position where we take the value picks and we take the obvious role changes, and we go with that as our lead. I would be surprised if anyone was going to be spending more than Jackson's price point on a forward next year, which is around 530. So the value where you're going to get your money from, because there's going to be so much expensive mids and defenders, has to come from your forward line. So I think that is an interesting thing moving forward.
Yeah, Robertson's a good one as well if he goes to Fremantle.
Yeah, 249k or something like that. Is Dev Rob
chasing him hard?
Nah, West Coast have given him a 4-year offer.
Yeah, West.
Yeah. A 4-year offer.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Well, He goes there.
Hard,
What? He
eh?
just slots straight into the midfield alongside what?
Midfield.
Jinby, Tim Kelly,
Yeah.
and Harley Reid.
And apparently the
Oh, you're
person
right.
that does all their
They're taking
uniforms and all
trouble.
their Guernseys, Chris, they're going to use his stomach as a washboard to
Yeah.
clean up
No.
all the
What a
Guernseys
bo-
each week.
But
What a body.
Oh, they got to sell tickets somehow.
At what point does Charlie Curnow become like the Tom Hawkins? Hawkins, like every year, was like
Yeah.
top 10. At what point do we start going, yeah, maybe we have to consider this
Oh.
guy? Do we go and
If-
undervalued Jeremy Cameron if he's
If
fit and
Carlton
firing?
play, whichever key forward plays West Coast twice next
I was
year.
about to say that. Who's playing West Coast and North twice? Who's the team that gets them twice next year? Because that's, like we've seen Tex. What did Tex go? 10-9 or something against against West Coast, and had a pretty good game, I think, against North. So it's, fixture will be everything. And especially if they, somebody gets like Hawthorn or Gold Coast at home, there'll be a key forward there that might be a smoky for a even maybe if, like, not next year, because I don't think they improve enough, but Nick Larkey 1 year is going to have a really standout year, because once they actually get a midfield that'll kick to him all the time, he's kicking 70 goals in a low team. So there'll be.
Oh, dude, they're already. He must be the number one targeted forward in the comp.
Yeah, that's right.
Bro.
He's but if you just had like more delivery inside the 50, because they're the worst inside 50 team
That's true.
in the comp. So I think there's a little bit of that change of the key forwards. Like, we're going through that stage where 60 goals would nearly win you the Coleman, and all of a sudden now it's like, we're getting up to that 80 goal range. I don't think we're getting back to the spot where we'll get 100 goals, but I think some of this maybe finally clubs have worked out these 666 and better delivery to some of these key forwards. We might actually get a couple key forwards coming through.
Fair enough, mate. Well, that pretty much wraps us up. I'll just have a quick squeeze if there was any forwards that we didn't really have there. I suppose the big one, the glaring one that me, DR, and you, Ben, all had that really tanked was Cunnington. So fortunately for me, I traded out of him before his game, but I did have Zeeble. Unfortunately, well, he was going all right, so he would have been.
He was at 100 though. So if you got him, you got that average and then traded out of him, then that's still a win in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Heaney dropped off, played a little bit of a tagging role at times during the year. We had Dylan Moore at 10. He actually was just outside the top 10. I think he averaged 91. And Jezza Cameron, who started like a house on fire, and then we found out was playing with an AC joint injury for the second half of the season.
Since he got knocked out. Oh, how good's this though? In our keeper league though, I traded Jezza Cameron for Matt's number 1 pick, because we all thought Matt was going to win. So I was like, Jezza Cameron for pick 10, because he was going for the win. Next minute, he has all these injuries, and now I have like Jezza Cameron for pick 5.
Yeah.
What a win. What a win that is.
But that's it, guys. That was a bit of a roundup of the season.
Can we touch on, as in just quickly, reflections for next year? Now, the sub rule is one that I really want to bang on about, because I kind of overthought the sub a little bit. It was definitely a challenging scope to kind of work through, because we had players that were played a game, subbed a game, or sub for a couple, played a game. Where do you guys stand with the sub moving forward?
So one of the trends that I noticed was that a lot of the time, even if they were, one of their best players in the team, they'd get subbed the game that they came back from an injury. So they might only play 3 quarters if they got to that point without another team injury. So especially if they're on the older side of things. So instead of, they go into the game as a plan that if we get to 3/4 time without injury, we're going to sub you. So that's part of playing 3 quarters in a AFL game as opposed to playing a full game in the VFL for comeback. That seemed to be a coaching strategy. They definitely did sub out tools. I think that's something we said in the preseason as well. But it wasn't so predominant that it was every single game the 2 tool system. It was definitely, is it working? Is it not working? Then trade it out.
How's some teams starting tools on their bench? Like Brisbane, I think, had Fort. I'm pretty sure Hawthorn's had Meek a few times as well. We
had Cox against Brisbane, and it actually really worked, because we were getting killed by Big O, and then Cox gave him a bath in the second half of that game. So, it's strange things. I'm not entirely sure what the premise is there. I couldn't really say that there was a rhythm to it.
No,
Definitely
there's the
kids getting
cheaper
subs.
rookies. The cheaper rookies weren't the greatest options. Like in the past, we've had those 102 to 123k rookies, and I felt they were the ones starting a sub or getting subbed a lot more than our premium rookies. Like I can't remember too many of the premium rookies outside, like say Jimmy when he got injured or concussed or whatever it was that game, ever really being in contention for subs. So. We have one in Victoria. No. Yeah, so that's definitely something to maybe consider next year again. It's we're going to have the cheap rookies or even the players in their sort of their first year. They're the likely to get more sub. Where some of these players, yes, it's disappointing that they made their debut this year late in the season, and they're now going to be 150 to 200k, which is frustrating. But I think those players are less likely to get big sub than the new guys coming in.
Makes sense. Do you notice anything yourself, Ben?
No, I just for me it was mainly about the rookies and just don't overthink it because ones that were dropped kind of came back into the fold anyway. So if you're around the best 22, you might kind of hang around the best 22 or at least come back at some point to dominate like Johnson and the other ones did, or Van Ruin. And more price point doesn't necessarily mean better job security. Like Clark, I think it was from Richmond. Is it Judson Clark? Yeah, don't go there.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was frustrating.
Yeah. So that was pretty much it for me. Don't overthink it. And if everyone's going there, just live or die with everyone else because it was painful.
It was a big year for that, actually going with
mate. I didn't get I went Judson Clark instead of getting Ryan. Samson Ryan. I didn't get Van Ruin that round because of the same thing. I didn't get Johnson because of the same thing. It was just one of those for me where the risks I took, they just didn't do well. The rookies and the ones I didn't get did well. So
one thing I will say is that I think it's likely that the boosts go next year. And I think a large reason why we had the opportunity to go with the crowd is because you could pick 2 rookies a week, especially early on in the season. And so you didn't necessarily have to choose between one or the other. And so what that would mean is that, like, I for example, once I ran out of boosts and then started having to choose one or the other, it started to get a lot more difficult to nail a rookie selection. Whereas early in the season, you could just jump on anyone because there were 2 clear standouts. When it came to, I had to get Weddle or Atkins, I think it was Weddle or Atkins. Pay up to get Atkins or get Weddle. Now, both ended up being good selections in isolation. But at the time, I could only get one because I needed the cash to go up to someone else, or upgrade in the other line. So that if we take out the boost next year, which I think will happen, I think that they will get rid of the boost. That you might find that there's more diversity in terms of the rookies that you actually get in, and more people will be over different selections, and it will make the teams a little bit more different. So that could be a real point of difference coming through next year, just the fact that we don't have 3 trades in a week.
Yeah, so I do. Yeah. Talking to L, I think the boosts are going to go because we don't have the same COVID issues that were just sort of there as a safety measure in case the COVID was still around. We didn't kind of know about that.
We had the issue with, Setterfield and all those, Zeeble, Setterfield, all those uniques, and then all of a sudden everyone owned them because they could just throw boosts on it to then fix their side. It wasn't a selective hearing. It was every team was the same. And that was kind of the hard part about it. I think whereas in previous years, you could have those uniques and, ride it through. So I'm trying to think of like a Hawthorn who was that guy? 200,000 Hawthorn player that sputtered up since. Impy. So like players like that where you just couldn't get on. You had to make a choice. You're either on, you're off. You Paddy Dow's like that was the ride or die. Whereas this year was like,
unique. Yeah.
And then this year people could just use the extra trade to get their rookies and correct to get those breakouts at the same time. So then it was like, well, you should have to choose. Do I want a rookie? Do I want a breakout? Where am I going? And then
someone who started with both Zeeble and Setterfield didn't matter because by round 3 everyone had them anyway.
Yeah, or round 4, and they were still cheap enough that people could then still jump on Zeeble, etc. Yeah, painful. So, I feel you. All right. Well, hopefully that is the good news out of that. I have made some recommendations to them about sort of like keeper leagues and having, with the filter, adding a couple of additional sections like age or draft pick or whatever, just to kind of help you filter through young talent rather than going by average only or points per. So there's a couple other things that I've tried to reach out.
With Janko there, so about the 20 trades. I don't think it's going to happen with that. I've actually had that message a few times, but I could definitely see a world where they could potentially go up to say 30 trades, where it might be a trade around, but say 2 around that middle of the year. But I think I'm really hoping, because I know they've discussed the wildcard idea of that, which is the content creator's dream. So we really hope that
is that
gets
where
up.
wildcard where you can reset your whole team, or is that a
Reset your
different
whole
one?
team. Yep, around the bye period. If there's
Yeah, see,
hopefully
I'd like to
bye.
keep something around the buys, as in either even the trade boost. You have 5 extra trades, but you can't touch them until the buys. Or
Yes, after
something,
the
you know?
buys. So
Like,
what
yeah,
I'd
so
like
in
to
that way, you
see,
can't use them. So,
Yeah.
yes, you get your 30 trades plus the 5 boosts, and those 5 additional trades don't kick in until, like, round 12. So that way, you really are trying to build that momentum. You hit the buys. You can use those extra trades to cover the players you're missing, to get 18 on field, to make some aggressive moves to finish your team. But then at that point, you've already kind of made all of the groundwork,
And
not
I think
using all your trades early.
the wild card there actually brings players that would never pick into contention. The big ones say Chase Jones was an interesting one this year, where we knew we'd never wanted to keep him, but potentially for somebody who you like, leading into the wild card week for 4 weeks there, could I bring this guy in as a cash boost? Triple captain once, I know they've got that obviously in the Fantasy Premier League where you could use that one time. That would potentially be.
I really
very
like
interesting one.
I really like the idea of the wild card, because, like you said, it makes the first half of the season, the whole point. Yes, points are important, but it is get as much cash as you can. So you're jumping on Chase Jones. You're doing your hedge with Tex Walker from 2 years ago. The guys that spike a huge score, you're jumping on for 3 weeks, because you only have to really ride it for 6 weeks until you can trade them out. And in that time, if they keep going, great, but you got to trade them out in 6 weeks. If not, then you might trade them out before, because you still have some trades to be able to work with. But I really like the idea.
And that's where we were saying the period there, sorry, Benny, that we would actually have different teams leading into that wildcard weekend instead of everybody having similar teams already. And then it's like, and because everybody would have different cash, how you set your team up on the run home is actually going to be different. So it's bringing different players and strategies into play. Ben?
I like the wild card as far as. Sorry, I'm hearing noise. I don't know if it's you or me.
It's probably me, Ben.
Or reverb 3. No, you're right. So, as in the wild card for me would be, so that way if you've completely butchered your side, people might want to try and use their wild card early to like fix it. Rather than having to use all your trades, you might try and fix it for there. That's number 1. Number 2, imagine if you have like 3 injuries one week and you're like, oh, that's like 3 trades, or I've got to try and use a boost during the buys, or you can trade aggressively up until the buys, knowing that you leave that last one where all the players are stacked and all the premiums are stacked, and then bang, you're going to use it there, bring them in. Or you got 3 injuries and you're like, oh, that's 3 trades I have to use. Oh, bang, I'll use it there and I can have a fresh slate and I don't have to use a trade at all. Or you can keep it right until the very end. Imagine that. You bank all you've got rookies that are now worth 200K that you can't use your trades for. You bank all that cash, you get towards near finals, and then you use it. And then you can then go 102K rookie, and then literally just maximize cash on field.
Yeah,
it does provide options. It does.
I think initially I'd like to see the wild card the same week. Everybody's just going to use it. There's 1 week there, and then they can explore the idea where you can use it at any point. But I think first year we just have it round 12, round 11, whatever.
Or during the buys, give them a couple of round.
Well, I'm hoping the buy period's only going to be 1 week. There's potential that happens. I've heard rumors, but the AFL, who knows with that?
Yeah. So one thing that someone brought up to me was like,
the rain here, I think, coming through.
Yeah. So a wild card.
Pissing down.
Sorry, guys. A wild card could mean that everyone just has the same team, and like no, because everyone has different cash, which means everyone's going to have different teams. But at the end of the day, what people don't understand is that in the current system that we have in Supercoach anyway, by the buy rounds, I would suggest that probably 12 to 14 players on any given 22 are all the same anyway. Everyone's got the big 3, big 4 forwards. Everyone's got the big 3, big 4 defenders. Everyone's got the same rucks, and everyone's got the top 2 or 3, 4 midfielders. Really, your team is made up by that last 8 guys and the combination of those 8 players. That is what differentiates a good team and a bad team. It's really it comes down to 8 players because everybody has the other 14. So when people say that, it's completely wrong. It's incorrect. So yeah, I really like the idea of a wild card, but I can understand the trepidation because it is change, and people don't like change. I deal with change every day in what I do. So anytime you change anything, people go, whoa, hold up. Let's just wind it back a little bit. We don't want to move too far forward. So,
all right, let's wrap it up because
I
it's
was going to say,
pissing
Bri,
down
do you
rain
want
where
to?
Chris and we are.
I was going to ask
Yeah.
Bri, who's just walked in. Do you have any changes for Supercoach for us?
Oh yeah.
She's giving me nothing.
Essendon making the finals. That's her change. Oh. No, she didn't even say Essendon making finals is a change. Wow, that's cutthroat.
Do you have
Tough
anything
crowd.
to add?
Yeah, more trades.
Yeah, she's actually said more trades. Actually, you can
More
actually,
trades.
we can actually hear you, bro. I think.
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah.
More trades, yet keep Parish is what she's saying.
Yeah. Keep Parish Essendon make finals.
Yes. All right. Well, that's it from us. Let us know what you'd like to have done. I think we're looking at maybe recording end of the week or into next week. Something a little special. An all-time draft. Is it best 22 or something, isn't it? In positions.
We'll explain more.
Yeah.
when we come in next week.
Yep. Gary Ablett pick 1 and Akamanis pick 12.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you need to know.
That's all good, mate. It's been fun.
All right, that's it from us. Look, we will get our best work done in the preseason, like always. It's pretty much where we do the best work. I also have that sort of 6-week period of holidays over that off season, smashing out the statistics as always. Let us know if you are keen for that ride. Let us know if you've enjoyed the ride so far this year. And look, hopefully we have a little bit more continuity with understanding of the sub rule for next year. But it has been a blast, boys, and I'll catch you next time.
Done.
That's it from us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.